Hey photo students, are you ready to learn a little bit more about Photoshop? Okay, well here's the tutorial for creating a circular panorama. Just like the one you see on the screen here. This is a photo that I created from a series of photos that are all stitched together in a panorama and then turned into a circle. That's hopefully what your results will look like at the end of this lesson today. Alright, so here's what you need to know in Photoshop. We're going to touch on something called photo merge, so creating one big photo from several individual photos. We're going to learn a little bit about merging layers together. We're going to take some time to look at settings and the use of the crop tool. We're going to need to know a little bit about changing the image size, changing the image rotation, and last but not least, playing with a filter called polar coordinates. Okay, well let's jump into Photoshop and take a look at another series of photos that I've taken in a field near my house. You can see my little dog right here. She got caught in the series of photos. That will be actually step one, is gathering all these photos and getting them into your computer. So if they're still in your camera, get them downloaded to your computer and have them ready to stitch together. Alright, so that takes us to step two. We want to go to the File menu, choose Automate, and then down to something called Photo Merge. And that is Photoshop's automatic way of taking all these individual photos and stitching them together into one. Alright, so we want to go select our photos, so Source Files, click Browse, go to your computer where you have a series of photos. Here are mine. I'm going to click the first one, drag down to the last one. I have about 15 photos here that I'm going to stitch together. Click Open, and then all those photos are listed here that are going to get put together into one big photo. Before you click OK, make sure that the layout is on auto and this checkbox is checked for blend images together. Then click OK. However, I'm not going to click OK, I'm just going to click cancel, because when you click OK, be prepared to wait. This image here took over 6 minutes for the computer to generate. So all those individual photos, Photoshop has to go through and figure out how they all fit together to assimilate into this one image. So take a break, go get a snack, a Coke, a cup of coffee, watch a little TV, something, and come back in about 6 minutes or so. Alright, so I did that ahead of time, so we're ready to continue. Now we're on to actually step 6 in your tutorial if you're following along. Step 6 says we need to first resize this picture and merge all these layers together. So if you look here at the layers palette, try to close up some of these and get this where you can see it. Alright, so when Photoshop stitched all these together, it created all these separate layers. And all these large photos, go to the image menu and go to image size, you can see it created a really big photo. This one is 52 inches high by 420 inches long. That's incredible, and it takes up a lot of memory in your computer and the working space that you're trying to work on right now. So we're going to size this down a little bit so it's a little bit more manageable and it works a little bit faster. So make sure that all these are checked, and then let's just go up to the height and let's make it maybe 10 inches high. That's going to make the width much smaller. The height's going to be reasonable, and that's going to be something we can deal with. Alright, so we'll click OK. And it's going to take a minute to do this because it's got to condense all of those layers or all those sizes into a smaller image. So it's getting rid of some pixels and making a more manageable size for us. So while it's doing that, let me tell you a little bit about the other part of step 6, which is merging all of these layers together. So you can kind of see here each individual picture has its own little special place in the order of how they all stitch together. We're going to place those all in one. We're going to end up here at the layer menu as soon as the image size is all process down into a much smaller, manageable size to work with. Takes just a few minutes. We're working with very large files. If I wanted to make this go faster, I could set my camera so that I take pictures at a lower resolution. So on your Nikon cameras, you could go down to maybe the basic setting instead of fine quality, and that would make the images capture in a lower resolution, which for this project might be kind of handy. All right, so there we go. It's now a smaller size. If I go back up to image for a moment and image size, you can see now it's 10 by like 79, almost 80 inches, which is much easier to handle. All right, next step is to merge all these together. So we're going to go up to the layer menu and go down to merge layers. Click on that. Now you can see automatically it's one layer, and that takes up much less space as well. All right, on to step 7. We need to crop this photo a little bit. As you can see here, all of these little gray and white checkered areas are telling us that that is transparent area. So when it stitched it together, Photoshop didn't keep this very straight. The photos, to make everything line up, all these little things in the image, this got a little wonky on the top and the bottom. So we're going to crop this so that the top and the bottom are nice and straight. We're also going to do one more thing. We want to align the ends so that when this picture gets turned into a circle, there's a seamless transition from the beginning to the end. So in order to do that, first of all, we're going to click on the crop tool, and instead of this 5x7 I had up here before for some reason, we're going to take all those out, and I'm only going to put in the height number, 10 inches. All right, and that means when I drag my mouse across this picture to try to select the area that I want to crop, it's always going to crop it so this height is 10 inches. So whatever the length is, fine, but it's always going to be 10 inches from top to bottom. And then also I want to adjust the ends. Okay, so this is the tree. You can kind of see there's half of the tree here. Move it in just a tiny bit. There's half of the tree there and half of the tree over here. So I'm going to try to maybe just go a little bit more than halfway. So halfway through that tree, halfway through that. That's going to be my stitching line. So when they stitch up together, hopefully they'll look like one perfect tree, and that's kind of my loop. Hopefully it'll look continuous. All right. Now I want to make sure I don't have any transparent stuff showing on the bottom, but I think I'm okay with the top if it has a little bit, especially because this tree right here kind of gets cropped off. I wouldn't find as much room for him as possible. That just means my final circle is going to be a little wavy around the edges. All right, I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to double click inside that area, and now here's my crop. Hopefully that'll make a really nice circular panorama. All right, the next step, and this is a little weird, we're actually going to distort it quite a bit before we get to the final step, but it's very necessary for making this happen in a perfect circle. We're going to turn this nice long skinny panorama, squish it into a square. So to do that, we're going to go to the image menu, image size again, and this time we're going to uncheck this box that says constrain proportions. That way, if I change the height, it won't automatically adjust the width, or vice versa. If I change one of these, it doesn't automatically adjust the other, because I want this to be the same as the height, so the width and the height the same. So we're going to make these both 10 inches, and then click OK. And you can see we messed it up. It looks really strange. That doesn't look right at all. It's all squished, but that's exactly what we want. In the next step, you'll see this works out great. Okay, so when we want to turn this into a circle, the computer actually uses the top center spot to kind of like where it folds and squeezes it together. So if you can imagine, if we did that right now, this would be the middle and all this would be the outside edge. We actually want it to be the opposite. So we're going to flip this picture upside down. So we're going to go to Image, Rotate Canvas 180 degrees. So now it's upside down, and when we squeeze it together, it will the sky will be on the outside where we want it. All right, step 10. We're going to go to the Filter menu. We're going to the Distort category, and we want to pick the one that says Polar Coordinates. All right, you get a little preview of what it's going to start to look like. That's the center. Make sure that rectangular to polar is checked. That is the correct option. You can see if we click the other one, it doesn't look right. It's completely kind of zooming in on the wrong thing. Okay, rectangular to polar, and then click OK. There you go. And now you can kind of see, here's the center, just like you're looking right down on a spot from maybe a long distance away, and you can see the 3D look of the trees standing around in this circle, looking like a cute little miniature planet of your world. Here's my little dog right there. Okay, so obviously at this point, this is all the farther that the tutorial takes us, is to step 10 with making it polar coordinates, but that doesn't mean you have to stop here. You could come in here and kind of clean things up a little bit if you want. For example, I'm going to grab the eraser and just kind of get rid of this little overhang here. Something happened there where that one was kind of oddly placed together. Where the two stitched together at the top, I think I'm just going to kind of blend that a little bit, make it look a little bit more seamless. Zoom up a little higher, you can kind of see that. There's where our trees overlap to stitch the picture from left to right together. If I wanted to, I could add a background in here. You can see this is all transparent behind it. So I'm going to come over here and add a new layer, rearrange it, put it on the bottom. Let's see, go to my paint bucket, and yeah, maybe I'll just put black in the background right now so you can kind of see the edges. It's kind of interesting looking. You can continue to do a few more things if you wanted to. For example, maybe you'd like an adjustment layer because the brown's a little blah. Maybe we want to kind of maybe pump up the color, do the hue and saturation, change the adjustments of the colors just a little bit. I kind of like that really nice intense blue on that one. Maybe even make the saturation a little bit stronger. The greens come out a little bit. Maybe want to add an adjustment layer for, let's see, selective color, and I can go in here and pick the greens and see if I can get those trees to be a little bit greener just by picking some of the colors within them. All right. Now I have a pretty dramatic difference from the original with the way that the trees look against the sky. Just playing with some of those things, and if I don't like it, I can turn them on or off to create some really cool effects. I kind of like that. I'm going to leave it. One more thing I'm going to do before I'm finished, and that is I'm clicking back down here on the layer that's my little globe or little planet shape, and I think I'm going to kind of blur the edges just a little bit, and I'm going to do that by coming over here and making the elliptical marquee, and then by holding Shift, Control and Shift down, I can start drawing from the center. Actually, it's the Alt, sorry. Shift Alt, and you can see I'm making a perfect circle starting from the center, and I'm working my way out there, and I've selected a little circle part of that planet, and I'm going to select the inverse of it, so not the planet but everything around it, and just delete that part. And now I've got a perfect circle, almost like a planet from a distance in the sky, that you can see the edges going around there. So that might be where I stop today. Kind of an interesting little spot. Something to try and see what happens when you put in your photos that you took today out experimenting with 360-degree panoramas. Good luck. I hope you had fun, and I can't wait to see what yours turned out like. Make sure you post them on Echo today.